Hi, and welcome to My Words, Our Journey. I'm Mana, your host. Today we begin a short journey. So instead of season 6, let's call this our My Words, Our Journey short expedition. 1, because I like the name. 2, because this story is different from me, and I want to see what you all think when we're done. I'd like your feedback. It's truly an expedition of sorts. So let's begin. The Souls of Willow, Chapter 1. Sister Willow was not feeling well. When she didn't feel well, there was only one place she liked to go: the hidden wine cellar deep beneath the walls of the Holy Mother convent. The convent had been her home for almost 12 years. She remembered nothing before the convent. Her only memories, good and bad, were created within these walls. The 89 other women were her only family, friends, confidants, spiritual leaders, and prayer warriors. She knew of no other life, a simple life she looked forward to almost every day, minus those like today, when her stomach and head could not agree on which was going to feel worse. The coolness of the room, the stillness somehow made her feel slightly better when she laid her head on the now empty lower shelf, where she kept a small pillow and blanket that she had brought from her room over 2 years ago. No one could tell her when the last time a bottle of wine actually sat on the shelf, but from the dust, it had been a very long time. Still, the room was just what she needed today. It was dinner time, a very active time in the convent. Her job had been peeling potatoes, and she had done that. And when she was done, she'd ask permission to skip dinner. She did not ask often, but when she did, they always allowed her to be absent. They knew where she was going. There were so many more pleasant rooms on the grounds, so it was hard for anyone to understand the attraction for the young Willow, but they could see it helped her pain. Eyes closed and sleep near, Willow heard a distant noise that made her sit up and listen closely. Thunder and Storm stood by the door ready to attack whatever may come through. Thunder and Storm were brothers. Both weighed approximately 120 pounds, were about 4 years old, and were full-blooded Gothic Dobermans. They were only puppies when a local shelter offered them to the convent, and Willow had begged until the powers that be allowed her to have them. It had been love the first day, a love that went both ways. Now, the three faced the heavy door, waiting for something, but there was nothing. Finally, not able to wait any more, Willow pulled open the door. Still no sound. That was normal. They were nowhere near the dining hall. Walking at a pace much faster than she had traveled only a few minutes ago, the three stayed in step, one protector on each side. As they rounded the first corner, it was clear to her that the dogs heard something. She had not heard yet, but by the next corner, she could hear something in the distance. Crying? Screaming? The smell of smoke and the heat hit her in the face like a hot brick as she came upon the double doors of the dining hall. The scene was unthinkable. Fire raged, bodies burning, some on the floor, others ablaze as if they circled, looking for any relief from the pain, where there was none. All she could do was watch in horror. The fire covering the exit was well above her head, and so intense neither her nor the Dobermans could take one step closer. Helpless they watched, unable to turn away as friends, leaders, keepers of secrets. Faithful, loving, charitable, God-fearing women burned. The first only felt like a quick shiver, but as the souls of the dying looked for relief, they found Willow, young, innocent, but strong and determined. Each took refuge. With more deaths, the shiver had become a full-blown convulsion as her body was filled with the spirits and souls of the 89 young girls, ladies and women, that died in the room. A furnace more than room at this point. The stress of the whole ordeal caused the teen to pass out. Blackness. Nothing as the corpses of those she loved burned. When it was done, there would only be ashes. Chapter 2. 24 hours before the fire. Sister Bethany, Margaret, and Hilda had done the weekly grocery shopping for years. It was just known that that's what they did each week. And if you needed something special, you asked one of them for help. And if one of them couldn't go for any reason, they would wait. It was always the same three, generally the same day, same time, and they went as a team. The trips were uneventful, but it gave them a chance to get out, a change of scenery, and an opportunity to spend some quality time together outside the convent. The trip, by horse and buggy, would take approximately 3 hours if everything went as planned. The trip, on this particular day, was far from uneventful, and the ladies would make sure the officers at the local courthouse would know about it before they headed out of town. It started before the nuns could enter the market square. Men had made comments to them before, but for the most part, they would fade away once they realized they couldn't get under the ladies' skins. These men were different. They acted offended, even angry, when they couldn't get them going, even with swearing, denouncing God, and saying offensive things to them, asking very rude questions. But when one of them put his hand on Hilda's arm, the three point blank told them, back off, and they would be speaking with the authorities. The men persisted to a point that one of them threw something at the wagon as they tried to get away from the situation. No one in the parking area, market square, or finally the courthouse wanted to help the sisters. It was as if they should just turn the other cheek. Margaret was prepared for the lack of concern, and when she explained to the young men that one of her many charitable events was a favorite of the constable's wife, they would be having a conversation with if the situation was not handled. With no sense of urgency, two lawmen walked over to the market and found out who the men were. It was funny to everyone when they came back and talked about the Murray brothers. The ladies had no idea who these men were, but the authorities did. The brothers were part of a bigger group that liked to spend their days sleeping and their nights getting into trouble. Because of that fact, it was clear the men sitting in the courthouse with nothing to do were not going to do anything about what had happened to them. As they went to leave, Hilda made sure it was perfectly clear they would be having a conversation with their immediate supervisor regarding the lack of care, knowing it probably meant nothing to them. As they traveled home, now at least an hour later than they should be, unaware of the danger that was being created, one of the justice officers wandered over to the favorite drinking spot of the Murray brothers. They were there with some of their counterparts, and all had already been drinking plenty. When they heard the news, they took it as well as expected. In the end, they decided to pay the ladies a visit and persuade them to keep to their own business. It happened to be dinner time when they began to throw torches through the open windows. By pure luck, the second and third torch set the exit to the great dining hall aflame. It was the only way in or out of the room. The windows were open to try to get a cross breeze, but they were too high off the ground for the panicking group to reach. There was a skill required to open and close the windows. The men outside could hear the crying and screaming, but they had no idea the carnage that was taking place inside. How could they? How could they know this was the only exit and it had been taken away from the dying women? So the men stood outside and laughed, joked, carried on. It was when there was no sounds coming from the convent that some worried. All decided at this point to get as far away as possible. When asked later, they would all swear they had never left the drinking hole at all that day. Chapter 3. Thunder and Storm were sitting next to Willow when she awoke. The smell of death strong. The realization that none of what happened had been a dream. Small fires still existed around the hall, but the heat had gone away for the most part, and now the three could move closer to the opening. The dogs had no interest in going in. Willow had seen other dogs dying in the flames and smoke with her family. She hoped her dogs had not. Willow had to sit back down because of the dizziness she felt. The stress of it all was too much. As she sat with her face in her hands, she heard her name. A voice she thought was in her head until she heard it again and realized it was Sister Bethany's voice she heard. Excited that someone may be alive, she forgot about her dizziness and ran in the direction of the voice. When she found her dear sister, she was shocked at how she looked. Her hair had been burnt off. Half of her lovely face was missing. She couldn't move. Still, she motioned with her eyes for Willow to move in close, so the young girl did, and when she was close enough, she heard a tale that would change her life and the life of the small village below forever. Bethany told the young Willow of the events the previous day and how the men had come to intimidate them, how they laughed, made crude jokes as her family and dear friends were dying of smoke and fire. Some even threw rocks into the chaos. Then she told of what else that happened, what Willow did not see with her eyes, but felt with her body, mind, and soul. The women had decided they were not ready to exit this life, to have their end be determined by a bunch of drunks, rude men. So when they had seen Willow through the fire, each one, down to the last, had said the prayer of the soul, a special prayer each had been taught when they were younger. The prayer, if answered, was supposed to give the one praying the right to move their soul from their dying body to another living being. When Willow had felt the first shiver and the convulsions after it was the soul's entering her being, and if that was not enough, they had said the prayer for the dying dogs as well. Thunder and Storm were now carrying the souls of 3 brothers and sisters. The reason? To avenge those that were lost, with the help of those that were lost. Short expedition equals short episodes. Willow has found herself the only person alive in the convent, and now she's been told revenge was in order. Join me next episode to see how Willow, Thunder, and Storm will take on this great responsibility. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.